You were born in 1990s Mexico when hope was tanking. Your bio dad dipped when you were 3 years old exactly, so your mom filled that void with a stepdad who drinks. His only talent was turning oxygen into booze breath every day. To him, you weren't a son, but an unrealized asset instead. His business model was simple, and he'd dump you at intersections. He'd dump you at a busy intersection under the blistering sun, with one goal: 50 pesos a day, no matter what happened. If you came home 1 cent short, dinner was a beatdown. But you quickly realized that relying on charity is trash ROI. Why wait for a handout when you can just take it? You stopped begging and started reclaiming what you needed to survive. While other kids were crying for nickels, you diversified into theft. Fast hands, baby face, zero regrets, thanks to that grind set. You never missed your quota again and learned lesson 1 early. Nobody gives you anything. In this world, you snatch it yourself. One day your sticky fingers lifted a treasure from a suit. Not a wallet, but the first-gen Game Boy console instead. For the first time, you actually had agency over something. You got so hyperfixated on those green pixels you blew quota. That night, the beatdown was a given, and you were bruised. Bruised and humiliated, you crawled into a corner to find peace. But you made a rookie mistake and forgot to mute volume. That 8-bit chirp alerted the beast, and he snatched it. For the first time, your fight or flight chose fight instead. You swung back at him, but the result was another thrashing. Another brutal thrashing and an immediate eviction to the cold streets. Starving and wandering, you hit a bus terminal for shelter tonight. You saw a driver toss a stack of unused tickets away. Your criminal brain saw a market gap you could exploit completely. You could flip these, but there was a technical bottleneck first. You needed the official hole puncher to validate them all properly. The next day, you pulled your first social engineering hack ever. You hit a driver with that innocent orphan energy asking nicely. Humans are always the weakest link in any security system, always. He gave you the address and you went there and stole. The setup was complete and time for the big play now. With that stolen puncher, you had free rides for life now. But you can't eat bus tickets, so you decided something. You decided to disrupt the market and started flipping those passes. You started flipping those passes to neighbors at 90% discount. Business was booming, and for the first time, your pockets were. Your pockets were heavy, and that's when you found your calling. You realized hard work is for people with no imagination here. While scams are infinitely scalable at 12 years old, you weren't. You weren't dreaming of toys, but manifesting home ownership instead now. But every financial bubble eventually pops, and your operation got flagged. You were dragged to the precinct, and the cop asked something. Asked the most terrifying question possible: who is your legal guardian? Your blood went cold because you knew if they called stepdad, he wouldn't show up to bail you out but deliver punishment. In that moment of desperation, your criminal mind leveled up completely. You stopped being a petty thief and became a method actor. You summoned surgical-grade tears and built the perfect narrative out. You weren't the mastermind, but you were the victim, you said. You told the cops your stepdad forced you to steal everything, that he ran the ticket empire and he'd discipline you badly. You gaslit the system by blending the truth of his abuse. You blended the truth of his abuse with your innocence lie. The cops looked into it and the neighbors confirmed the screams. Your plan worked flawlessly and the police saw a helpless kid. Your stepdad got cuffed and you were tossed into the foster. You were tossed into the foster system immediately after that happened. Fate swiped right on you and you were placed with couple. You were placed with a young, rich, and fertile couple who wanted you. You didn't just dodge jail, but pulled off a massive social. You just pulled off a massive social glow up in life. In your new crib, you had everything you ever lacked before. Hot meals, high thread, count sheets, and parents who worshipped you. But what really snatched your soul wasn't the family bonding part. It was that beige box on the desk, the PC computer. This thing was light years ahead of your old gray brick. You became a total shut-in, and to feed your curiosity, your parents hired a private tutor, biggest L of their lives. He taught you the syntax, but you unlocked God mode programming, a world where you were the architect and the laws of. The laws of physics were whatever you coded them to be. Then came the dot-com boom, and you realized a hilarious truth. Most people treat their computers like magic toasters with zero hygiene. To test your theory, you cooked up some malware disguised completely. You disguised it as a digital love letter to catch people. Human stupidity and curiosity did the heavy lifting for you completely. Over 100,000 people opened that email looking for love. But they got clapped instead, and their screens locked into loop. An infinite loop of an animated cat shaking its ass forever. You didn't ask for a ransom because money is mid. Money is mid when you have total power over everything here. You just wanted to humble the world from your bedroom completely. You went on an absolute rampage exploiting human error instead. You were catching so many bodies that the press gave you. The press gave you your first title, the twerking cat hacker. One day you got bored of catching small fry targets online. Your ego needed a real challenge, so you aimed at CIA. You aimed at the biggest predator in the ocean completely now. But you didn't use supercomputers or Hollywood lasers at all. You used something much deadlier, which was patience and research completely. With a few lines of code and some open source intelligence, you started digging into the private lives of the top brass. You discovered a hilarious truth about the world's most powerful spies. The world's most powerful spies have trash operational security completely. You found pet names, home addresses, phone numbers, and anniversary dates. These tiny digital crumbs are the keys to the kingdom. You chose your target, which was the director of CIA. The director of the CIA himself was your masterpiece target completely. This was your masterpiece of vishing using voice modulating software here. You coded yourself to sound like a burnt-out middle-aged. You called his ISP's tech support, and the operator was underpaid. The operator was an underpaid drone just waiting for their shift. They hit you with the standard security questions and thanks to your research, you had all the cheat codes ready. In under 5 minutes, you pwned his account and reset password. Now you had total access to the spy chief's personal email. And there it was, the holy grail, a leaked security form. A leaked SF-86 security clearance form with everything inside. This document had the social security numbers, medical histories, and dirty laundry of thousands of field agents working undercover everywhere. You could have sold this to a foreign power for millions. You could have nuked the entire US intelligence network completely tonight. But you didn't, because it wasn't about the bag at all. You just wanted to leave your tag on the wall, to prove you were the smartest person in the room. The next day you started data mining through the files carefully. You weren't just scrolling through files, but using graph theory instead. You used graph theory to map out the connections between everyone. Soon, the scattered puzzle pieces formed a terrifying mosaic picture completely. You realized the line between the government and organized crime. The line between the government and organized crime isn't a wall, it's a revolving door, and you saw wire transfers, encrypted threads, and off the books, orders confirming the unthinkable truth about everything. The agency wasn't fighting the cartels, but they were managing them. The instability in conflict zones wasn't a policy failure at all. It was a feature, not a bug, designed to keep the dark money flowing through the system. You felt like a god watching the strings that move. But while you were deep in your rabbit hole, they were back tracing your digital footprint, and your ego made you sloppy, and the CIA director didn't call. The CIA director didn't call the local cops at all tonight. That's too much red tape, so he sent a black ops. He sent a black ops team with no badges, no flags. National sovereignty is just a suggestion to these people working here. They didn't knock, but they breached your front door with RAM. The sound of splintering wood mixed with your foster parents' screams. They were zip-tied on the floor, clueless as to why. The agents swarmed your room, ready to neutralize the asset immediately. But all they found was the hum of servers and chair. An empty chair, because you're no amateur at all here. Paranoia is a hacker's cardinal virtue, and you'd rigged microcams. You'd rigged microcams on every streetlight in the block. You saw the blacked-out SUVs 3 minutes before they pulled. From a rooftop blocks away, you watched through binoculars carefully now. You saw your parents being dragged out like criminals for loving. For the crime of loving you, and you watched your life. You watched your perfect life implode in real time right now. You'd lost everything again, but this time you had receipts. You had the receipts on your hard drive with you completely. You're a ghost, now living in flea motel with roaches. Living in flea motel with roaches for roommates leeching Wi-Fi. But while your body's hiding, your mind is diving into servers. Your mind is diving into the deepest, darkest servers on planet. Every layer of encryption you peel back reveals the truth clearly. That CIA agent list was just the teaser trailer for everything. The main feature was the blueprint for global gaslighting and control. You found folders with sci-fi code names but R-rated. but R-rated outcomes, and you realize the 6 p.m. news. You realize the 6 p.m. news isn't reporting reality at all. It's a script written in Langley months in advance, already prepared. Then, there were the accidents and politicians who had sudden failures, politicians who had sudden brake failures, or journalists who committed suicide. Journalists who committed suicide by shooting themselves twice in back. The agency's creativity for death was darkly peak and efficient completely. But the folder that really blackpilled you was the war on drugs, and for years they sold you. For years they sold you the story that the US fought, that the US was fighting the cartels, but the files said the opposite, and they weren't fighting at all. They were white labeling, and they funded and armed specific groups. They funded and armed specific criminal groups to destabilize Latin America. Just to keep the status quo, and chaos isn't a glitch. Chaos isn't a glitch, but it's the operating system itself completely. You had the power to nuke empires with this data. Your first instinct was trade the data for your parents back, but your logic kicked in and you don't negotiate with terrorists, especially the ones with federal badges, and try to cut deal. Try to cut a deal, and you aren't an interlocutor here. You're just a loose end waiting to be accidented by them. To save them, you had to stop being a lone wolf. You needed force multipliers, and you needed allies with as much. Skin in the game. The vibe had shifted, and this wasn't just a hack. This wasn't just a hack anymore, but it was asymmetric warfare. You chopped your hair in a gas station bathroom and traded. You traded your designer drip for thrift store rags completely now. You're a ghost now, hiding in plain sight from everyone. You bounce from one greasy spoon to the next, IP hopping. IP hopping faster than the CIA's algorithms can trace your ping. You knew a solo run was a suicide mission completely. You needed backup, and first, you needed clout with someone important. You tracked down a washed-up investigative reporter who was heavy. A guy who was a heavy hitter until he asked questions. Until he started asking the wrong questions about the defense budget. And got nuked by the feds, and now he's a ghost. Now he's a professional ghost, writing for a blog with zero. You sent him a teaser, which was a low-level file. He bit the hook, immediately begging for a face-to-face. But you're not a noob, and in this game, meeting means. Meeting in person is how you get bagged by them. You shut him down and strictly encrypted self-destructing texts only. He folded, and now you had your mouthpiece for the plan. Next, you needed brute force, and you dove into dark corners. You dove into the dark corners of the web completely now. The places Google won't show you, and you pinged a syndicate. You pinged a syndicate of digital mercs who weren't idealistic activists. They were black hat pros who stole credit cards for sport. They didn't want cash, but they wanted leverage from you instead. You offered them the crown jewels, which was the dirt on senators on the Hill who control cyber laws. In exchange, they gave you their massive botnet swarm for signal. The deal was sealed, and truth in one hand, megaphone other. The board is set, and time to stop running and call. Time to make the call that'll give DC a heart attack. You took a deep breath and dialed the number to them. The voice on the other end didn't sound like a monster. It sounded like a bored paper pusher, and they fed you. They fed you the "we want to cooperate" line, claiming parents. Claiming your parents' safety was their top priority, but then your trained ear caught at a slight audio lag. That wasn't a bad connection, but it was a routing loop. They weren't negotiating, but they were buying time to ping tower. You slammed the phone down and let survival instinct take wheel. You bolted out of the cafe and hopped on your bike. Your gut was prophetic, and the second that engine roared, three black SUVs pulled a perfect pincer move, blocking the street. Agents hopped out with long guns, but you were already blur. You were already a blur on the horizon, and hunt was. The hunt was on, and they had V8 Torca training. You had pure desperation and a master's degree in urban infrastructure. The SUVs were gaining on the straights, their armored bumpers inches. You knew you couldn't outrun them, so you decided to outcode. You remembered a fact most people ignore about modern cities completely. Modern cities run on SCADA systems, industrial control tech from 80s. Days ago, you'd scanned the city's traffic grid and found backdoor. You approached the city's biggest, deadliest intersection with the plan ready. With one pre-programmed command on your phone, you sent signal, zero lag, and your lane hit a bright green light. For the cross-traffic, you forced a simultaneous green light. You cleared the intersection at 60 miles per hour fast. Behind you, the world turned into a symphony of screeching tires. Innocent drivers just following their green lights boned the SUVs. creating a massive barricade of steel and smoke behind you completely. While sirens and horns filled the air, you vanished into alleys, shielded by the beautiful chaos you just orchestrated for your escape. The adrenaline from the getaway turned into straight poison and fury. You were fuming, and if they wanted to play dirty, you were going to blow up the whole board completely tonight. From your hideout, you triggered the Scorched Earth protocol, launching everything. You dumped the decryption keys to your allies, the reporter mercs. You sat back waiting for the PR apocalypse to hit. 1 hour, 2 hours, dead silence. And the internet was business. The internet was business as usual, and that quiet was scarier. You tried to ping the reporter, but he was ghosted completely. You tried to crack into his smart home security grid, but the whole grid was dark offline, and that's when you knew, and you hijacked the neighbor's Ring camera. The angle was perfect, and the reporter's door swung open wide. 3 guys in full hazmat suits walked out carrying industrial bags. These weren't CSI, but these were the erasers working for them. They'd flatlined the messenger and were hauling him out in pieces. Panic set in, and you played your last card to syndicate. You sent an SOS demanding the attack, but instead of a copy, that your personal firewall started screaming alerts. Red alerts everywhere, and they weren't DDoSing the government at all. They were backtracing your ass, and in that split-second reality hit you, and you'd made the most basic rookie mistake. You believed in honor among thieves, but Uncle Sam simply cut them a fatter check and sold you. They sold you out, and your head was the bonus prize. You were alone, backstabbed and boxed in without any options left. You weren't looking for a deal anymore, but going for destruction. You were going for mutually assured destruction, and from a server bounced through 12 different countries, you finally hit enter, and in a flash, terabytes of receipts. Terabytes of toxic receipts flooded the inboxes of CNN, BBC, everyone. But you knew editors could be muzzled by them easily, so you needed something they couldn't gatekeep, and you hacked the billboards.